We can go ahead and start. Well, thank you if you're watching us on Facebook. My name is Alex Escobedo, and I am a communication and events coordinator here at LCBH, or Lawyers Committee for Better Housing. And today we're going to cover best practices and things you should know, information you should know when moving out of an apartment or moving into an apartment. With me today is Morgan Schuman, staff attorney here at LCBH and manager at Renovention, an online free resource for Chicago renters facing housing issues. I am going to post a link in the comment section on the Facebook Live video stream that if you need any immediate assistance or have any immediate concerns, so please go to renovention.com. That's where we can assist you the best. And I will also post a link for a Google Doc form. So if you have any topics or questions that aren't related to moving in or out of an apartment, you can put your comments there and we can address them and make a future video in the upcoming weeks. I did collect 4 big questions about moving in or out of an apartment. And to start off, Morgan, the first one that we did see was, can I request a lease from my landlord if my landlord did not provide me with one?
Sure, and thank you for the introduction, Alex, and welcome to everybody that's joining on Facebook Live. That's a good question about whether you can request a lease, and we actually did this related topic in our last Facebook Live video, so if you're interested in getting a lot more detail about this, I'd encourage you to go out and check the recording for that video. But the short answer is that you certainly can request a lease, and especially before you are moving into an apartment, you should think heavily about whether making sure that you have a written lease is something that's a priority for you. It can be really beneficial for tenants, because it can help to ensure that you have housing stability and you know that you're going to be able to stay in the place that you're moving in for an extended period of time. Sometimes if you're just moving in and you're relying on an informal agreement to rent the apartment at a certain amount per month, you might not realize it, but your landlord could choose to terminate your tenancy with only 30 days notice for almost any reason. And so you might find that shortly after moving in, you might have to move out again. And so if you're really looking for that stability in your housing, you can certainly request a lease from your landlord. It can sometimes be in a landlord's interest to give you a lease as well, because on the flip side, you are, required to stay for the term of your lease unless you're able to sublet the apartment to somebody else, or if you're able to, break your lease and move out, you might be on the hook for paying, for months that you're not actually there. So think about that, in terms of whether or not having a lease makes sense for you. But I think for most tenants, it does really help them to have a one-year lease, and you can certainly request that. If your lease is expiring and your landlord has not reached out to renew it, that's also another time that you can reach out to your landlord and request another lease.
Awesome. Thank you for answering and addressing requesting leases, Morgan. A second question that I see is, what should a tenant do before they move, before and after moving into an apartment?
Good question, Alex. And this is related, I think the first thing that you would want to do is to make sure that you have a lease in place. And I would really make sure, that you get that in place before it's moving time, before the day that you're actually showing up with your boxes. It can be a really good idea to make sure that all of your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and that you have a signed lease agreement. So that nothing, can change or can go wrong. Especially right now, it's a really volatile situation, and sometimes, things that we're expecting to happen are not happening on the timeline that we're expecting. And so you might find yourself in a tricky situation if you waited to try to get a lease agreement until you were ready to move in. There's always a chance you could go to move in and something falls through. So I would encourage you to protect yourself first, to try to get that lease. The second thing is, when it comes time to actually moving in, you want to really document the way that the apartment looks when you move in, and make sure that any repairs that you were expecting that were going to be completed are actually done, at the time that you move in. Make sure that if the landlord is promising to do anything to the unit between the time that you see it and the time that you actually take possession of it, that you get that in writing from your landlord as part of the lease that they're agreeing to make those certain repairs. Because if that's not in writing, it can be hard to prove that that was ever part of the original agreement. So you'll want to check, confirm that everything the landlord said that they would do before you move in actually is done. And then I would encourage you to make a detailed list of everything that you can find that's wrong with the apartment, so that when it comes time to move out, none of that can be pinned on you, that you're able to document exactly what it looked like and what the condition of the apartment was at the time that you took possession of it.
Awesome. Thank you. If you're tuning in on the Facebook live stream, we're talking about information on moving in or out of an apartment. Please, if you have any questions or comments, post them into the comment section, and we can address the questions via that are posted on there. This third question that we got, Morgan, was regarding security deposits and what should a tenant do if their landlord doesn't return or refuses to return a security deposit?
Yeah, another good question, Alex. And security deposits, I do want to say, can vary depending on the jurisdiction that you are. So depending on where you live, the rules around security deposits are going to be different, and they can also differ depending on the type of building that you're living in. So the answer that I'm about to give, Alex, is related specifically to Chicago tenants that are living in buildings that are protected by the Chicago Residential Landlord Tenant Ordinance. And that generally applies to buildings that are larger than 7 units or smaller buildings if the landlord does not live in the building itself. But for most tenants in Chicago, I would say, if you give your landlord a security deposit, they are required to, maintain that security deposit, so that when you move out, you are entitled to get that back, minus, of course, any deductions for things that the landlord specifically itemizes that are wrong with the unit that were due to your fault. So this is not just typical wear and tear, but something, if there was actual damage that you caused to the apartment, that could potentially be pulled out of the security deposit. Or also if there was back due rent owed at the time that you moved in, landlords are allowed to keep a portion of your security deposit or the full security deposit to make up that past due rent. But assuming the deposit is owed back to you, you should expect that you would receive it from your landlord within 45 days of moving out. If that doesn't happen, or if you have additional questions about security deposits, please do go to rentervention.com. Rentervention.com can actually generate a letter that you can send to your landlord that can demand that they return your security deposit. And so I would encourage you to think about that as a first step if you're encountering a landlord that's refusing to return your security deposit. And if that doesn't work, it might be time to contact an attorney or to see, about trying to take more forceful action to get your deposit back. But the first step, for most tenants is going to be sending their landlord a letter demanding that they make the return of that security deposit after 45 days.
And I do want to add that I did link the Renovention link in the comment section. So if anyone has any immediate concerns or wants to visit rentervention.com for any housing needs, the link is already in the comment section. The last question that we did get, Morgan, was when can a landlord enter my unit to show its prospective renters?
That's another good question. Wow, lots of intriguing questions today. In terms of when a landlord can enter, there is the residential landlord tenant ordinance sets forth the times when you're required to allow your landlord to enter the building. And, of course, that includes times like when the landlord needs to come in to make repairs to the building, but also whether the landlord is allowed to enter to show the unit to, a prospective renter. And I think one of the main things to think about, especially during this COVID time, is about the risk to tenants if the landlord is bringing new people into the unit to show the apartment building. And as part of Governor Pritzker's original stay-at-home order, the Department of Commerce had issued some guidance about landlords not being required to show occupied apartments to prospective renters. And it's important to keep in mind that that guidance, is likely changing as we are entering out of phase 2 and potentially into phase 3 of the governor's orders. So there's certainly an increased chance that your landlord is going to have the right to bring somebody in to view your unit if your lease is about to expire or has already expired. So you'll want to keep that in mind. But at the same time, your landlord should not be doing anything entering your unit in an effort to harass you, or for making demands for entry for unreasonable reasons. And so that's something that you can keep in mind and check out the residential landlord tenant ordinance to see what the different circumstances are when you do have an obligation to allow your landlord to come into the unit. But certainly you can request that they wear a mask and that the people viewing your unit also wear a mask and try to maintain social distancing to the greatest extent possible. And the visit should also, always be given enough time. So this shouldn't be a surprise knock on the door. You should at least receive 48 hours notice if you're protected by the RLTO before your landlord is allowed to enter for this reason.
Thank you, Morgan. I do want to say, if you're tuning in on Facebook Live, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the comment section. If you're watching this video after the live stream, please post any questions in the comment section. I do monitor them every day, so we can always get back to you if post live stream. You can also go to rentervention.com. The link is in the comment section. We can best assist you there. If you have any immediate concerns. Looks like those were the 4 big questions that we got on the Google form. So I'm going to give it maybe a couple of seconds to see if any questions come in on the comment section. But thank you for the information, Morgan. It's great information and great insight.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to talk to you. And we're on live every Thursday at 6. So if you are just joining us for the first time, come back next week and keep us posted if you have questions. We're here to answer them and get tenancy information that you need. So, just let us know how we can help.
Definitely. Well, it looks like there's no questions coming in or comments. So thank you for your answering our questions today, Morgan, and your time.
Thanks, Alex. Take care.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.